Hey, welcome everybody. Tonight, good to see you on Zoom. See everyone on Zoom. Um, Tonight we are going to continue from our discussion about Spheres Omer, some of the halachas as relates to counting the Omer. That's where we left off last week. And then we will move in once we finish that. That'll just be a few minutes. But when we finish that, we're going to talk about some of the different customs of mourning that that people do during the counting of the Omer. Certain practices that we have, um, minhagei of Balis is what we'll call the practices of mourning that are very common for people to do during the Omer. So, so what we were about to start last week, and what we'll pick up this week is the best time to count the Omer, the best time in the night. Um, So it's important to define our terms before we get into this discussion. So the first term is shkia. Shkia means sunset. So if I was looking at I mentioned this before, but pulling up a calendar for today, we'll do like the New York Times. So shkia tonight is 8:06. Right, so we passed shkia. Shkia means sunset. So that's one time to make note of. And the second time to make note of is um Seis Kochavim, which means when stars come out, when three stars come out. That tonight is 8:54 p.m. So the period between Shia is 8:06 tonight, with when the sun sets, that sunset, and Seis is what we call Bein Hashmoshos, which means in between Shia and Seis Kochavim. So now that we have defined those terms, oh, sorry, just one more point of introduction is that this period in between Shkia and Bein Hashmashos, which is what we're in right now, right? That is this period right now because we passed sunset, but we haven't yet got to the stars out point, right? In between 8:06 and 8:54, 8:32 right now. So that's really we have this doubt whether it's considered day. We're not really sure if it's considered day or if we're considered night. And that's the halachic doubt that it might be day, might be night. So, anyways, so we pick up as it relates to Count of Omer on that note that the Shulchan Aruch writes that those who are, he uses the word medaktikin, meaning those who are like very careful. He says, if you're very, people who are very, very careful, they wait until safe. They wait until the stars come out, right? Tonight that'll be 8:54 in order to count the Omer. And he says that is really what it's most proper to do is to wait until 8:54. However, says the Shulchan Aruch that one has fulfilled their obligation if they count at Bein Hashmashos, meaning if they count after 8:06, which that would be if we count someone counted during this period right now. So he says the best option is to wait till after stars out, but you even fulfill your obligation even if you count during this Bein Hashmashos period. So the Mishnah Berurah explains, based on a Tosfos in the Gemara and the Nachos, that one can count during this period, Bein Hashmashos, period that we're in right now, because nowadays, like we mentioned, or just to review this point, is that counting of the Omer, Spheres Omer, it's a machlokes, is it a biblical obligation or a rabbinical obligation? And we said we probably ask and we probably understand that most understand that Spheres Omer today is a rabbinical obligation. So therefore, the rule is anytime you have a doubt on a rabbinical obligation, you have a suffix rabbanon, so you can be lenient. So the Mishnah Berurah says, since Spheres Omer is a rabbinical law, right, and we're in this period where we don't know if it's day or if it's not night, right? That's this period right now in between 8:06, 8:04, Bein Hashmashos. So therefore, since we have a doubt on a rabbinical law, we can be lenient, and therefore you can count during this period. You can say it with a bracha. But the Mishnah says, nevertheless, since there are those who hold that the counting of the Omer, Spheres Omer, is a biblical obligation, is a deraisa, then right, if you have a biblical obligation that you have a doubt about, you have a suffix on a deraisa, on a biblical rule, so then the rules you'd have to be stringent, it's the machmir. So we said, since some people even though most people hold that counting the Omer is rabbinical, which you would, in case you, which if that were the case, you could be lenient. Some people hold counting Omer is biblical, and therefore you have to be stringent. And so he says it's proper to wait until after stars come out. And also he says it's just always better not to put yourself into doubt if you don't have to. So better to wait. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says. And so there even are those opinions. The Biur Halacha quotes from the Aliyah Rabbah that he says that if you count during this period of Beit Hashmashos, then it's better to count again. But that's really the minority opinion, and the Shulchan Aruch, really Shulchan Aruch says it's failure obligations. So definitely almost everyone would agree that if you count during this period, if you count after Shkia, you're okay. But there is a discussion also about counting even earlier. I only mentioned to you two times. I mentioned to you sunset, which is Shkia, and then I mentioned to you Seis Kochavim when the stars come out. But there's an even earlier time where you could possibly count, and that's from Plaga Mincha. So if you look at a calendar for today, Plaga Mincha, it's period earlier in the day. So today on the calendar it would be 6:36 p.m. That would be Plaga Mincha. So the Biur Halacha writes that there are places where they're lenient to count after Plaga Mincha, right? That would be after 6:36. If you look outside 6:36, right, you would tell me it's for sure day. But halachically that may even already be considered night. So he said there are places that are lenient to count after Plaga Mincha, even though like after the night is the best thing. And Biur Halacha said because people are just used to davening Mariv very early because people like to daven Mariv earlier, otherwise it gets too late. And so therefore people are going to be worried that if they don't count after Mariv, then they're going to forget to count later. So what you can do, and what the Biur Halacha says is okay, is to count even after Plaga Mincha. So that would allow you to count after you daven Mariv, even if you daven Mariv at 6:36, right? You daven Mariv at 6:36, and it doesn't look like night, but the Biur Halacha says there's no problem. You could still count if you're worried you're going to forget. But the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah they offer this suggestion because a lot of people they're like, I could count now, but really I'm going to remember. So like, why should I do it not as good as I could do it? Because again, the Shulchan Aruch said the people who are most careful and everyone wants to do the mitzvah the best way, they wait until after taste. They wait after the stars come out to count. The Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah they offer the following suggestion that if you want to be someone who's careful about counting after taste, but you're davening in the earlier minyan, right? Let's say the Marv that you go to is that it's after Plag, it's very early. So he says you can count with them, you can count with the shul, and you perhaps you shouldn't say a bracha to yourself, but maybe listen to the chazan saying the bracha, and you should make the following condition in your head. Say, if I remember to count later on, then I do not want this counting to count. I do not want this counting to, let's say, fulfill my obligation. Let's use that word. I do not want this counting to fulfill my obligation. But if I don't remember, then I do want this counting to fulfill my obligation. And this way, you covered your bases, right? If you remember, you're good. If you don't remember, then you're also good. And the Mishnah Berurah writes you could even do this on Erev Shabbos. And this would be okay. And what's more is that okay, so let's say I'm in shul and the chazan says the bracha. I say amen. I have in mind to maybe fulfill my obligation with this counting, right? I count the Omer. And then I remember 9 o'clock. I say perfect. After stars came out, and I want to count. The Biur Halacha says you can count with the bracha. It's no problem because the first time you counted wasn't really counting, and that's not considered a bracha levatala, a unnecessary bracha, because the first counting was really nothing. It was all made on this condition. So that is the suggestion of the Biur Halacha, and I think people really do this sometimes. Okay. Also, there's next discussion is not eating if you've not counted, because the Ramah he writes that once the time for counting arrives, it's actually prohibited to eat. And even if you started to eat, the Rama says you should stop and count. But if you started your meal before the time of counting, and in the middle, it got to the time of counting, right? Let's say it got to taste, you finish eating and count afterwards. So Mishnah Berurah extends this to not just eating, but other malachos, other activities which are set and might cause you to forget. The point is, we don't want you to forget to count. So that's where it comes from. So Mishnah Berurah says, perhaps since we paskin that counting the Omer is rabbinical, we don't need to pause our meal to count. And Rav Moshe says there are those who are lenient to eat before they daven Mariv, because you're not supposed to eat until you daven Mariv. But a lot of people eat even before they daven Mariv because they daven Mariv at a set time every night. So if you do that, then you would also be permitted to eat before counting the Omer. On the OU, they have this question. They say Shulchan Aruch. Someone asked, Shulchan Aruch writes that one may not begin a meal until one counts to his Omer. When does this prohibition begin? So they answer as follows: that the Mishnah Berurah writes that beginning 30 minutes before Teis Kochavim, one may not begin a meal until counting Sfira, even if they had already davened Mariv. One who considers nightfall to begin 50 minutes before sunset, after sunset, must not begin a meal once it's 20 minutes after sunset. However, if one started the meal before this time, they may continue eating. But then this is the important part, that if one wishes to begin a meal during this time, they can appoint a guardian to remind them. However, the guardian must be someone who is not involved in the meal, else he too might be distracted. So that's a big leniency that you can, which is what most people do. Is that if you have someone who's going to remind you, then you can even start your meal. So then, right, what's better than someone reminding you is having a phone remind you, right? Phone is going to remember. It's going to remember. So this is what they say with regard to whether one may set an alarm to allow eating before time Sphira. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Rav Yashav, Shmuel Bosner, they were all of the opinion that it helps. Whereas Rav Nissen Karelitz, he says that since an alarm merely rings and does not explicitly remind him what to do, it does not help. Well, I would think that nowadays that our phones are so advanced, right? We can create an alarm where not only does it ring, but also remind us exactly what to do. I even have an app that sends me an alert every single night and says count the Omer. So I think that's the best option possible because it's certainly not going to forget. Okay, so that's that discussion. This is a very important point, which is, what if you forgot an entire day? You didn't just forget the night, but you even forgot the next day. It happens from time to time. Hopefully, it shouldn't happen to us here. But what happens if you forgot the entire day? So the Bahag, his opinion is that one who forgot an entire day can't count with the bracha the rest of the days because the psukim in regard to counting the Omer say the word tamimos, which means like pure, and he understands that to mean that every single day is required. And each day is contingent on the other days to happen. So if you forget one day, you cannot make a bracha. You haven't fulfilled your obligation. That's the opinion of the Bahag. So the Mishnah Berurah says that many Rishonim, almost all, they argue on this Bahag. They don't agree, and they say no. Each day is its own mitzvah, its own bracha, and therefore, of course, you can continue to make a bracha even if you forgot an entire day. That's the opinion of most Rishonim. Nevertheless, as the Mishnah Berurah, we take the Bahag seriously and don't make a bracha if we forgot a day because safek brachos harta, which means that anytime we have a doubt about if we say a bracha, if we don't say a bracha, we say better not to say a bracha. Why say God's name in vain? But he says that, but really, most people say that you can continue counting even with a bracha. The Mishnah Berurah says, though, the proper thing to do would be to hear the bracha being made from someone else, answer amen to that bracha, and then count on your own afterwards. And yeah, so that's basically the point, that even if you miss an entire day, a lot of people say you miss a day and say, did you count the Omer? No, I'm out. I can't count anymore. It's not true. You still count, and it's still a mitzvah for you to count. Most Rishonim would say that you might even be able to count with the bracha. Just one opinion who says don't count with the bracha. So you for sure should continue counting. There's no out. You're still in. You're never out. But you can't make the bracha. Okay, just try to listen to someone else make the bracha and answer. I mean, what if you're not sure if you missed the entire day or not? You're like, I think I counted. I'm pretty sure I counted, but like I don't know if I counted. So the Shulchan Aruch takes care of that problem. He says if you're unsure if you missed an entire day, you can continue to count with a bracha. The Mishnah Berurah says, and because we have this halachic principle called a fake, meaning you have two doubts. If you have two doubts, you can be lenient. So what are the two doubts? That perhaps you counted, right? Maybe you counted, maybe you didn't count, you weren't sure. And even if you didn't count, perhaps everyone else except for the Bahag is right. Right? We said most Rishonim hold even if you forgot to count, you could still count with the bracha. It's just the Bahag who argues. So maybe everyone else is right and the Bahag is wrong. So we have two doubts. You can keep counting even with the bracha. That's what Mishnah Berurah says. Just to illustrate this point that there's really no outs. So this is another very interesting question that I saw on the OU website that this is the following question. In many congregations, it is customary for the rabbi to recite Spiros Omer out loud at the conclusion of Maariv. A lot of shuls, just the rabbi says it by himself, and then the congregation repeats after him. That is a common practice. So let's say the rabbi he missed counting a day of Spiros Omer, and so therefore he's not going to be able to say the bracha anymore. So and he will be embarrassed if he does not recite the bracha, right? Because that doesn't look so good. The rabbi forgot it. It doesn't look so good. He might get a little embarrassed. So is there anything he can do? That's the question that they asked. So they answered as follows: that with Tzvi Pesach Frank, right? That Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, not the Rav, not Rav Joseph B. Soloveitchik. This is the Beis Halevi, his great grandfather, his great grandfather. I forget how many greats. That he was in this situation, and he made the following arrangement so that he could recite the bracha for the congregation. He asked one of the congregants not to recite a bracha, and instead have in mind to fulfill his obligation with the bracha of Rav Yosef Dov. The Jew is permitted to recite a bracha on behalf of another, even if he already fulfilled his obligation, based on the concept of arevus, that Jews are responsible for each other's mitzvah performance. So although the Beis Halevi could not recite a bracha for his own mitzvah fulfillment because he missed a day, he was permitted to recite a bracha for the congregant and would not be bracha latala. So the Herzfeld points out that not everyone agrees with this approach. The Pri Chadash says that he does not like this. He compares it to one who missed a day of counting to one who is not obligated in the mitzvah. Shows that one who does not have an obligation may not recite a bracha on behalf of one who does. But not everyone agrees to that approach. Because many Acharonim, like we mentioned, that they say that a person cannot recite a bracha, even though a person cannot recite a bracha if he missed one day of Sphira, he's still considered to be obligated in the mitzvah, even though he cannot say the bracha. So he can make a bracha for someone else. And so he said the halacha is like the Beis Halevi. That's what the Herzfeld said. There are those who disagree with the Herzfeld, and so that the rabbi should not do this. The Shevet Levi says that he writes that the rabbi may recite the bracha for the congregation and rely on the opinion of the majority, that even if one missed a day, a bracha may be recited, right? He may rely on everyone except for the Bahag. So although ordinarily we follow the ruling of Shulchan Aruch that a bracha is not said if the spirit is missed, in this instance, that the Shevet Levi may rely on the majority opinion, right? Everyone else, that a bracha can be said after missing a day to uphold the honor of the congregation and not to diminish the kavod, the honor of the Rav. Okay, so basically the point is that you're not out. You miss a day, you're not. You should try to stay every day. You should stay with the bracha. That is definitely the best. But if you forgot a day, don't give up. You're never out. So,
Roey, did Eli tell you what question he asked to Rav Schachter last week?
now what did he ask?
He said to Rav Schachter, I don't understand why the rabbi in the Yeshiva University says the bracha and then everybody else answers it, which is actually not our custom in Yeshiva Selling Melech, because if the principle of Shomea Ka'oneh would say that you're not supposed to listen to somebody else making the bracha for you. Everybody should say the bracha together. Like what he says, the Rav says about Hallel. So he asked that question to Rav Schachter. That was the picture of him with Rav Schachter. And do you know what Rav Schachter said?
What did he say?
He said, you're right.
Oh,
Everybody should say the bracha together.
Said everyone should say it together. Okay, so the yeshiva's doing it correct. Okay, that's beautiful. So yeah, so then also you're not gonna even if you do like that, if you have like the yeshiva that we all say together, like Herzfeld said, not gonna run into this issue. Okay, so now I guess we'll only begin our discussion about the halachos of Avelis, the mourning practices during the Omer. So the Mishnah Berurah writes that during the days in between Pesach and Shavuos, it is not proper to have too much simcha, too much joy during this period because we mourn the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva who died during these days. Um, and the Kaf HaChaim explains that they died because they did not act with kavod to each other. And therefore, we do everything during this period as a zecher to remember and to distance ourselves from hatred and jealousy. And instead, we work on loving each other and having this period of shalom between each other. And the Bir Halacha explains that they only died during 33 days of this period. So we only mourn for 33 days. Someone understand me that for 34 days, we're going to get back to that idea when we discuss the different practices, different minhagim of which days are which specific days during this period are observed. But I just wanted to share this idea that very briefly that my brother-in-law David he he, he spent yeshiva, he spent Shabbos in Bnei Brak with this Rav Aaron Pessin. So he sent me the following word, which is I think is very nice. So I want to say it that he said that the Gemara in Yevamos says that the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, the students of Rabbi Akiva, they all died because lo nagu kavod zeh bazeh, which means they didn't treat each other with respect. Um, so he asks the question. He says, okay, they didn't treat each other with respect, but why does that mean they should die? You know, we have usually we hold that there are only um three. You know, there are only certain affairs that we do which result in capital punishment. So why does them not treating each other properly result in death? So said that perhaps you can answer like this, that it says, okay, so what is the phrase? The lo nagu covered that they didn't treat each other properly. So that's how you would translate zebazet one to another. So it says the gematria of zeh, where zayin and hey is 12, and then bazeh, which is a bet, which is 2, and then zeh again. So zeh 12, that's 24 with the bet is 2, which totals to 26. And that's the gematria of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is of course Hashem's name. So he says perhaps you can answer that when you are noheg kavod zeh, when you treat each other properly, um, Hashem is right there with you, right? That's an allusion to Hashem. So when you treat other people properly, Hashem is right there with you. And when you don't, He leaves you. And when Hashem is not with you, when there's a hester upon him and God removes Himself, so everything can go wrong. You never know what can happen, and that must be what happened. So the rabbi said that the only problem is you open up your Gemara, the Gemara is in Yevamos, Tanach Beis Amud Beis. So if you open up your Gemara to that page, um, everyone quotes it lo nagu kavod zeh bazeh, like I quoted to you with this sport. But the Gemara says lo nagu kavod zeh lazeh with a lamed instead of a bet. So then your whole chiddush is no good because the gematria is not going to equal 26. It's going to equal 30. It's going to equal 54. He says maybe have to throw the whole thing out. So he said, but it's okay because the Medrash Rabbah and Koheles, right? They quote it zeh. It says zeh bazeh. So then the chiddush is a good chiddush, and that must be why everyone says it's zeh bazeh because they're getting it from the Medrash Rabbah and Koheles. So it's still a good word, just different source, not the Gemara. It's from the Medrash. Okay, we'll finish with this last point, which is we'll talk about the first the first the first practice of Avelis, of mourning that we do. The Shulchan Aruch writes the practice is not to get married during this period of 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 the counting of the Omer, because we don't want to increase the joy too much. It says if someone got married during this period, we don't punish them. So Chanarach then writes, though it may not be permitted to get married, but it is permitted to get engaged during this period. And the Mishnah Berurah says, how come it's permitted to get engaged? It is because you don't want someone to get to them before you, so you're able to do it. We don't want someone to steal the person you're trying to marry. So, and he also says it's once it's permitted to get engaged, it's also permitted to make an engagement meal. Um, so as it relates to that prohibition, it depends, right? It's again, this is not going to be for the entire. It depends on how you practice the days of like Omer, which I think probably makes the most sense to do next week. That there's not everyone holds that you need to do the entire Omer. In fact, most people hold you don't need to do the entire the entire Omer. Um, let's actually just do this right now. That there are three different ways that people understand three different practices. Is that number one? Some people hold that from the first day of the Omer until the morning of Lag BaOmer, if you're an Ashkenazi, and until the morning of the 34th day of the Omer, that's when you should observe all the practice of the Omer. Um, so that's one opinion. Another opinion is that you don't start keeping these practices until the first day of Rosh Chodesh ER. You start from Rosh Chodesh ER, which is already 14 days. 14 days like after you start counting the Omer, and then you go all the way up until Shavuos. And some people hold from you should go from the second day of the ER until Erev Shavuos. So that's another practice. And some people do more than 33 days, and they do all the way until from Pesach until basically Rosh Chodesh of Sivan. So there's the point is a different period. So the following question was asked is that my minhag, let's say your minhag, is to maintain the customs of mourning um, after Lag BaOmer. But you're invited to a wedding on Lag BaOmer. Um, but the music and dancing, they're going to continue after nightfall. Am I permitted to continue to participate in dancing? Similarly, may I attend a wedding that's scheduled during the latter days of Spirit? So basically, the question is, right? People have different practices of when they observe the Omer. Let's say you observe let's say you observe morning practice of the Omer, and the Shulchan Aruch just said you're not supposed to get married during this period, whatever period is of the 49 days that you observe. Okay, let's say you observe the first 30. Let's say you observe the first 33 days until Lag BaOmer, and so you don't do weddings. But someone else is going to take the later part, and they haven't started yet. So are we allowed to go to that wedding? So Moshe Feinstein writes that the minhagim or sphira are overridden by the mitzvah to bring joy to chassan and kala. He writes that it appears that one can participate in the wedding even if it took place even inappropriately during sphira. Although it is forbidden to arrange a wedding during certain days of sphira, it is permissible to dance and celebrate once the couple is married. And Moshe proves this from the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch writes that one is forbidden to get married between Pesach and Lag BaOmer, but if one did, we do not penalize him. Moshe argues that if no one is permitted to celebrate the couple, this would be an exceptionally severe punishment. It follows that if the marriage is performed in accordance with halacha, those who have a different minhag may certainly dance and celebrate together with the chassan and kala. And that's important to remember because a lot of times people will be making weddings and you'll say, hey, but it's the Omer. So okay, they might keep different set of days of the Omer than you, but it's still permitted for you to go to the wedding and celebrate with them. Or Moshe says he's actually encouraged. So we'll finish on that note and continue next week, God willing. Everyone, have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you.